Hello and welcome back to The Hatch. I'm Rosie Murphy.
And I'm Sammy Roth, and this is the podcast where we talk about Lost.
We are watching Season 4. We have reached Episode 9, The Shape of Things to Come.
Of course, this is a Ben episode. Everyone already knows that. And as you may have heard us say in previous weeks, we have a very special guest who is Michael Emerson, who's going to be discussing this episode with us.
Yeah, kind of like we did with The Constant a few weeks ago. We're going to do a deep dive into the events of this episode with Michael, talking about Ben's motivations. Of course, that scene, the big scene where Keamy kills Alex. Everything you can think of.
Let's not waste any time. Let's do it.
As always, Sammy and I have just watched The Shape of Things to Come in preparation. Sammy, what is your hot take on this episode?
Okay, so start with the most silly observation possible of one of the greatest episodes of all time. When Sayid, in flash forward, sees Ben, taking pictures of him, up from the rooftop of a building, and then chases him down in an alley and pins him down. Before Sayid realizes it's Ben, what he says to him is, "You vultures, you followed me to Tikrit, you spy on me." And then he stops and realizes it's Ben. And this had never occurred to me before. He thinks Ben is a paparazzo.
Yeah.
Or like a news photographer. And I just for some reason, I was just struck by how funny that was. We saw the clip of Sayid on TV earlier in the episode where he was brushing off, someone with a camera and saying, "I just want to bury my wife in peace." And I don't know who I had thought previously that Sayid was thinking Ben was, but it had never occurred to me, he thinks that Ben is a guy taking pictures to sell to, tabloid newspapers for distribution because he is a high-profile man now.
Yeah, it does suck, certainly, to have sort of one of the worst moments of your life photographed and distributed to the world. But Ben also is not pretending to be anything else. He rolls up to the scene in a van with press written on the back window.
Does he? Ben does?
Yeah.
Oh, I totally missed that.
It's pretty brief, but it's labeled press, and of course he has a huge camera.
Apparently, I don't know. This is one of my favorite episodes, not just of Lost, but of any TV show. But this was something I had never noticed. So thank you for telling me it said press on his van.
Yeah,
he was
it's
really,
super brief, but it is there.
Impersonating a news photographer. I have another hot take, but you go first. I think we might both have multiple hot takes.
This is going to be an episode full of them, but I'll stay in the flash forward as well. When Ben initially shows up in the desert and those two men ride up on horseback, and Ben just pulls out that club and kills one of them, or rather kind of knocks the one with his elbow and then shoots the other one. And it's this whole action movie sequence in 5 seconds. It's extremely shocking. And we have not ever seen Ben do anything like that before. As far as I can remember, I felt when I saw that, oh, holy shit, Ben knows how to do some stuff that is more in the Sayid realm of things. I mean, typically he's been a mastermind, but kind of prefers not to get his hands dirty when it can be avoided, leaving out the purge. And
right, no, I think you're right. I'm thinking back through, seasons 2, 3, 4, and I don't think we ever had one of our listeners, I'm sure will correct us if we're wrong, but I don't remember there being a scene before this where Ben, gets so physical in this way and shows that he is, it is a skill set we have not seen from him, I don't think.
No, and it was very surprising, and it's intense, and it shocks you, it's kind of a shock to the system, and you sit up real straight, and you're like, what in the heck is going on? But, yeah, that's it. I was surprised to see that side of Ben, and of course it won't be the last time.
Yeah, and by the way, stick around, obviously, for the conversation with him, because Michael Emerson tells a hilarious story about the horseback riding aspect of that scene, which I will not spoil, because we'll get there. Another hot take, despite what I said about this being one of my favorite episodes of TV ever, I will do my one complaint. I have just one complaint about this episode. And I almost feel bad centering this in our conversation, but it needs to go somewhere, which is that the thing where Ben calls the smoke monster, especially in hindsight, it really doesn't hold up. It doesn't hold up, one, in the moment, I think, because, it's such a holy shit kind of moment when the monster just steamrolls in there, bigger and fiercer than we've ever seen it. Like like it's industrial strength smoke monster. Like it looks like a train, running through a tunnel, but made of smoke. And then I guess we don't see this in this episode, so it's still kind of retrospect, but it only manages to kill one of them, which is really surprising. Like there's one dude on that whole team who gets killed, and the rest of them survive. You're looking at me all confused.
Really?
Yeah, really. That's accurate.
Huh.
I forget what the dude's name was, but only one of them gets killed, which is like, really? But then secondly, just the idea that as much as I want to love this thing where Ben, like has the hidden compartment within the hidden compartment with the hieroglyphics and that there's some monster calling button back there. Like when we think about the Man in Black and when we think about his origins and how he became the monster and, the monster's relationship with the events that are happening on the island, it really doesn't make a lot of sense that there would be like a call the monster button in, others' village and that, the Man in Black would, come a call in to do Ben's bidding in this situation. Like I don't get it at all.
Yeah. I mean, one possible answer to that complaint is the writers didn't know yet what the smoke monster was exactly. And
I think that's the most likely answer for sure. So that's my only complaint. The rest of this episode is perfection in every sense of the word, but I have a little trouble with that sequence.
Yeah.
Do you have any more hot takes?
I'll do one more quick one, which is just that when Sawyer is outside the cabin going to get Claire, people are just being gunned down all around him. We see 3 or 4 people get killed in a single shot, and then we see Claire's house get firebombed. No way Sawyer survives.
No. Also, no way Claire survives, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we should go down perhaps after Emerson of what's up with Claire.
I mean, I get, it's Hollywood, it's fine. Anybody can survive when we need them to for the plot, it's fine. But, yeah, no way.
What I thought was kind of, I hate to say the word hilarious about people getting shot, but what I think is kind of hilarious about this is effectively what it did is it killed off all of the non-main character survivors who were in Locke's camp, because by the end of that episode when, they're walking through the jungle with the torches, yeah, it's just Locke and Sawyer and Hurley and Claire and Aaron and Miles and
and Ben.
That's it. Ben, yeah, of course. Like all of the red shirts are gone. And we've still got some red shirts back at the beach, but they will all be killed in the flaming arrow attack in the flashes at the beginning of season 5. So just very, very neat way to boil it down to, to the ones you care about.
By neat, I assume you mean tidy and not cool.
That is what I meant. I am not saying killing is like cool. I mean, it's storytelling wise, it's tidy.
Great.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. Anyway, now that we have sort of joked about the parts of this episode that don't super hold up, let's go ahead and talk to Michael Emerson about the many, many parts that do.
I don't think Michael Emerson really needs too much of an introduction here. He played Ben Linus. He was nominated for 4 Emmys for this role, 1 on the 3rd try. We had him on the podcast back in season 2 as well, back in that Henry Gale arc, if you want to go listen to that. But before you do that, let's hear from Michael right now.
So, of course, we initially approached you about talking specifically about the episode, The Shape of Things to Come. What did you think when we mentioned that episode?
Well, I wasn't sure because I don't know the episodes by titles.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to go look it up, and then the whole family watched it the other night, and I thought, oh, shit, that is the epic Ben episode. That's the big one.
That's how we feel about it.
Not only is it action-packed and an introduction to a whole bunch of themes, but I think it's the turning point in audience sympathy for the character of Benjamin.
Well, that's an interesting comment, and we obviously have a lot of questions about that big scene, but it's interesting that you see it as the sympathy turning point, because I think there's a case to be made that this is the worst thing that Ben ever does in this episode when he refuses to come out of the house and his daughter gets killed. I mean, that might be one of his worst crimes.
It's a terrible crime, but evidently an innocent one, because he thought they had a set of parameters or rules about engagement. And one of them was no one in your family would be harmed.
Yeah, that's a good point, because that's your first reaction after it happens. You say he broke
That's
the
why
rules.
it's unthinkable to him.
Yeah.
Keamy doesn't even wait for the countdown. He doesn't even let him finish his tawdry little speech about how she's nothing to him. Oh, it's so sad, but human.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we'll get into that a little more, but just to back up first, when we get to this point in the season, I mean, this has been like a kind of a wild season for Ben. Like, everyone's beating you up all the time. You've been almost executed a couple of times, like knocked unconscious pretty much every episode. Charles Widmore has showed up and he's finally found your island. Just to put it in context, how do you think Ben's doing at this point? He's a guy who always prides himself on being in control and have a plan. How is he handling all of this turmoil?
Well, he's kind of on autopilot. I mean, he's doing what he thinks or knows to do, but it's not one of the more successful phrases of his career. And he must be, I thought he was desperate and, trying to maintain an image, which we'll eventually see it's a false image. But here again, this is all humanizing for the character, I think. He's guilty of hubris. He's guilty of pride. He's guilty of ignoring obvious signals, all of that stuff. But that's just him.
Yeah, you're even in the finale of this season, you deliver that that sort of famous line, "Haven't I always told you, John? I always have a plan." And even at that point, I feel like people watching are thinking, "Really? Do you have a plan?" Like, the next thing you do is you go and turn yourself over to Keamy. Like, how do you know that's going to work out?
What kind of plan is it that you have, Benjamin? Because it doesn't seem like a great plan. So you have one. So you're thinking ahead. So you fancy yourself a gamesman. How's that working out for you?
Yeah, not great. At the beginning of this episode, you're sitting alone in your house, I think is the first scene we see you here, and you're playing the piano to yourself. Do you think that's just a thing that Ben does? Like, is that how he thinks? Like, is he always just sitting playing, classical music?
I don't know. I think they were trying to give us the idea that he was a man of culture, and he had a private life, and he wasn't just this psychotic warrior figure, but that he had, aesthetic values, or he was a humanist on some level. Oh my God, that was a tough scene. The piano playing. Did we talk about this before?
I don't think
so. Was that actually you?
I read the script and I thought, well, I don't play piano, so exactly how is this going to work? And Jack Bender thought, well, it's only 8 bars. We'll get you a teacher. So I took piano lessons with a very patient and professional woman, a pianist. And frankly, I didn't have the manual stretch to play the chords of that particular famous opening passage. So after about 3 hours of lessons, I said, "Dear lady, I thank you for your time and your patience, but we're going to find a different solution to this problem." And I went back and I said, "Ain't no way. You don't have, it doesn't have to be me. Get yourself a professional player." So they did. They got a professional pianist, and he only got the first 8 bars right 3 out of 8 takes. So it was not easy. It was, Jack Bender just thinks, well, it's flattering in a way, because Jack Bender thinks I can just do it. I can walk on a tight wire, or, drive a tank, something like that. But it was like the first time I ever, I think, in my acting careers had to say, no, I just can't do it.
Huh. I'm walking away.
I think I think the person of culture thing makes sense, though, because in this flash forward in this episode, which we'll talk about, we also see you checking into a hotel in Tunisia and speaking, I think it's Arabic, and you're a preferred guest at this hotel, and they kind of look at you like, oh, this guy's back. Like, you're an international man of mystery.
So apparently he has I mean, that's a tease of a rich and varied life of espionage and travel and recruitment, all of that, which that's as good as that's going to get, because we don't really see. Well, I guess later in the episode we do see him following Sayid and recruiting him. That's in a longer series with more episodes, that might have been a sidebar or something interesting. It was fun to play. It was, I have to say, it was a difficult episode. I never worked that many days, that many scenes. I don't think in my whole career. There was no time off. And it was, it was tricky stuff. Where's the desert?
Where was the desert?
The desert is a gypsum quarry on the west side of Oahu.
Huh.
And it was about as hot as it looked. And the riding of the horses. And here's Jack Bender again, wanting me to gallop on an Arabian horse. I don't ride horses. He wants me to gallop on an Arabian horse down a slope of gravel and make a sharp left turn. And we did, how many times did we do it? Half dozen times. And he kept saying, you look like you're scared. You look like you're holding on. I said, I am scared. I am holding on. He says, for me, once, for a great take, just pretend like you're a cowboy. And I did it, and they never used it. So the lesson of that is, if you think it's too much, it probably is. Where was the stunt rider? Well,
I enjoy that you did that stunt, but that you had to bring someone in for the piano. That's amazing.
Right. They brought in someone for the piano, but not for the Arabian horse. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
It's a stunning scene, though. I mean, when you wake up in the desert and we have no idea what's going on. I assume you didn't know either what you were doing there or how you had gotten there at this point. You hadn't filmed the finale yet.
No. So, I mean, we'd introduced this idea of flashing back and forth in time. So I thought, okay, well, here we go. Let's see how they connect the dots. But what was fun and interesting, it was great. It was great work, that episode. And all systems were firing, design and direction. And they were long days, but they were productive. There's a lot in that episode for 9 days of work.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really stands out to me in rewatching this episode is just Ben is personally shaken up and scared. It's like we're starting to see the facade crack. What did you ascribe that to when you were playing that role? Like, what was it that was making him finally break down? Was that always just simmering right under the surface, that fear, or had the rules really changed?
I think his bravado was always kind of false. I don't think he was naturally a warlord or a commandant or a leader even. It was something that was an exhausting amount of work for him. He was supposed to be some other kind of boy, some other kind of life. I guess he was doing the best he could. I tried to find the pathos in it. You're overmatched. Now what? Now what do? You don't have any fallback. You don't have any assistants. You don't have any mentors. There's no one to go to for help.
Yeah.
So he kind of slowly loses his mind in the way that you would under those circumstances when you're ill-suited for your role.
That's interesting. I mean, that sounds like to me like it speaks to a pretty deep insecurity in terms of him being a leader. I mean, he couldn't stand to have Charles there. He couldn't stand to have anyone know that he couldn't really talk to Jacob. I mean, I guess he wouldn't have wanted people to see behind that facade.
Well, it probably has its roots in the deep insecurity of actors who never feel like they're really in command of what they do, or they always feel a little bit false playing a thing. So here it was. So there were so many parallels for me in the work on Lost between my own personal sense of displacement and uselessness and the actual displacement and uselessness of the characters sometimes. So I very often felt like I was adrift on an island in the middle of a vast sea, which I was in real life. And so was the character that I was playing. So how is that to be balanced out? I still don't really know. We seem to have managed it. Jack Bender always seemed to know, and Stephen Williams, everybody seemed to know that this was going just right. So there you have it.
I mean, to talk about a scene where it seems like you're very much in control of what you're doing and performing the role more than adequately. I mean, the center scene in this episode, which we started off with, is the scene with you all, jammed into the house. Keamy is outside. It's to me, it's the most tense scene in the whole show. I mean, the build up to what happens with Alex. Can you just talk about what that was like to film and working with Jack Bender, and just sort of how you built the tension up there? Because it just ratchets and ratchets and ratchets like crazy.
Yeah. Well, we knew it was going to go to heavy plays. So there was I can't remember the exact discussion, but there was some question about, let's save the heavy lifting for the end. Let's take care of all the mechanical business of handing out weapons and choosing windows and, where's Keamy and Alex and all of that. And we'll shoot all of that stuff. And at the end of it all, we will turn the camera on your sad little face, in that one pane of window that you can see through. And then we will figure out how to play it or what it is. But I have to say that I wouldn't even call that in the top 10 of difficult moments for me in that series. Because it seemed, I mean, it's just a bare naked horror and shock and an ungraspable mourning, and to know that you made like a cosmic mistake and it cost the life of someone. So I was ready to play that. I just thought, well, maybe Jack wants some other strategy or something, but he didn't. We actually didn't shoot that stuff. We didn't shoot that much. Mm-hmm. But sometimes on that show and in other work I've done, the stuff that you think, oh my God, I got to be ready for this. It ends up taking care of itself in some way. I mean, if you feel an empathy for the situation or for the character, and I always kind of feel empathetic about whoever I'm playing. I get them. I get Ben.
Yeah.
He's trying to be something that he can't fully live up to, but he has some skills. He has a skill set. He's a good talker.
Yeah, manipulating people and convincing them to go
along
with him.
Psychology.
And that's what he's doing here, right? In this scene. I mean, he thinks he can talk his way out of this, and that's the tragedy, which he can't.
Right. Yeah. It's a good strategy. In a chess game, he senses, let's undervalue the pawn. That's the way to save her.
And he actually calls her a pawn.
Oh, does he use that word? Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. But it was the wrong choice because he wasn't playing the game he thought he was.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that Keamy doesn't even wait for him to finish his speech, and he cuts off the countdown at 6 and pulls the trigger. To me, that's maybe the most jarring thing about it. You think there's more time, like you think it's not over yet, and then suddenly it's over.
Yeah. In the world of dramatic countdowns, that's a cheat too. We didn't even get the countdown. We no trickle of sweat ran down anybody's face. It was just 5, 4, boom. Wait, wrong. No.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Were you and Kevin Durand actually like on walkie-talkies together filming that, or was it one and then the other?
There was a walkie in the house.
Mm-hmm.
His walkie was live, and I was hearing him. I was mic'd, of course, like you are. So we were having a live conversation, but not through the devices that were evident.
Okay, but it
screen.
wasn't like there was some, assistant director reading his parts or something. Like you were actually having that conversation with Keamy, with the actor.
Yeah. Kevin was live on the walkie.
What do you make of just the Ben and Keamy, and then working with Kevin Durand? Because I'm having trouble putting my finger on it, but to me, like the moment they come on screen together and start that conversation, and we see this again between them in the finale dramatically. There's sort of like a cackle of energy. I can't quite describe it, but you guys seem like you're very good nemesis for each other.
I guess partly that is just actor chemistry. I look at him and what he embodies and what he sounds like, and it's like antimatter to my matter. He's just like, he is the non-Ben. But whenever you say that, then you have to think, okay, but there are some shared character traits.
We certainly see Ben as a cold-blooded killer in moments in this episode and all over the series. And
he's been ruthless.
Yeah, he recruits Sayid as a kind of mercenary type.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and all of that is contained in a way in this one episode.
Yeah,
the facets of Benjamin and his strengths and weaknesses and stuff that works and stuff that doesn't.
Before we move on from this terrible, horrible scene, one more question about it. There's a shot of Alex, of Tanya Raymond, right when you say she means nothing to me, and the camera then cuts to her, and she puts her head down and sobs even a little bit harder. Did you understand that to mean that she could hear what you were saying on the walkie? Do you think that those were? Are those the last things she hears? The terrible things that Ben is saying about her?
Yeah, I want to say that in the playing of, why not raise the stakes even that much more? To think that she hears her own newly discovered parent deny her, Yeah, it was bad. And of course, whether she hears him or not, Benjamin Linus will always believe that she did.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I have to believe that too.
Yeah. Do you think this changes Ben in any way? I know we get the whole sequence in season 5 when he feels that he needs to be judged for this in particular. What does this do to Ben?
Well, I think it's where whatever passes for faith with him, with the island, with Jacob, I think that faith is now it's cracked open. There's no going back from this. So I don't know, his forward momentum, his plan, if there is one from now on, will be flawed and a little half-hearted, I think, or desperate.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting, because in that reading, you could almost see this moment as if not the precursor to, then perhaps the first step on the road towards, Ben stabbing Jacob to death at the end of the 5th season. Maybe.
Yes, I think there's a direct line from this episode to that. Sure. This is one, I can't remember what my lines were exactly when I killed Jacob, but it was about him not supporting me having given all. And by giving all, he means my own blood, my own child. And that means this little to you, then die, you SOB. I think that was kind of his attitude.
I never thought about it that way. It's like if God actually did let Abraham go ahead and sacrifice Isaac, and then how would Abraham have really felt about God after that? we never get
Well,
that story.
I think Benjamin was tested in a way that Abraham wasn't.
You said that you think this is the beginning of, Ben becoming sympathetic. So to move in that direction, I guess, there's a whole huge arc, and we'll ask some additional questions about it, but you go through the judgment and you kill Locke and you kill Jacob and you apologize for all of that. How do you think it's possible for, just really big picture, how do you think it's possible for Ben to find redemption after all of these things he's done? When you've got the purge, and you've got, allowing his own daughter to be killed or causing her death, and then you've got in the finale of this season, when Ben stabs Keamy, he pretty much dooms everyone on the freighter to die a fiery death as well. How does a character like that find redemption?
It's not on his mind at the time, obviously. He's just scrambling. And the end of the series shows him unredeemed. So he's so caught up in the action of things that he has no reflective mode, I don't think. Well, occasionally, like when he has that father-son argument with Jacob, or there are some other moments where he reveals his weaknesses and doubts and his sense of betrayal. But mostly he just, he can't see anything else to do but just keep on with whatever crazed plan there was in place before everything went wrong.
So speaking of the plan and of the rules, this episode ends with Ben, sneaking into Charles Widmore's penthouse bedroom and having this kind of melodramatic conversation with him about how he's broken the rules, and your face is half in shadow and half lit, and you say, "I'm going to kill your daughter." What was that scene like to film? What information were you working with? What was Alan Dale like to work with?
It was so logistically weird because Charles Widmore was not available to try. He was in a West End show,
Right.
So
Spamalot, as I recall.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we talked to Alan, I think, about a year ago.
Yeah. And so Jack and I and Yunjin and, which DP? John Bartley. The four of us flew halfway around the earth from Honolulu to London for 18 hours of filming and then flew back. We were there so long. We were there such a brief time that when we got home, we weren't jet lagged. We were out of our minds jet lagged in London, but then it was like cured by flying back west.
Because it had only been 3 days, or
that was tricky. And here we were shooting in a foreign city, but they found this great set, and that scene to me was really satisfying because I thought the threat of it, the gamesmanship of it, was really high stakes.
Yeah, and
it was fun to be Ben and to keep a lid on it that much. The fact of him being in the man's bedroom, you don't need to raise your voice when your enemy wakes up and you're in the room. So then you just say what you need.
Yeah, Widmore says to you crawl in here like a rat. And it's like, it does kind of seem like that. You don't need to make a big splash. You're a rat in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's all right. Ben doesn't think he's a rat. Ben thinks he's an avenging angel.
Yeah. Well,
so he can call me what he wants. I don't even hear that. That runs off me like water off a duck's back.
That's a metaphor. That's a metaphor.
It's funny to me. This comes at a place in the season where I think the viewers really developed a connection with Penny, because we've already had the episode where Penny and Desmond connect across time, and that connection saves Desmond's life, and it's extremely emotional. And this is like 4 or 5 episodes later. And I remember the first time I watched Lost feeling like this made Ben into an even bigger villain, because now he's going to go he's going to ruin things for Penny and Desmond. And, you know, that of course doesn't end up happening, but nearly does.
I understand. I wasn't even thinking about whether he would really do it. But he had, right.
Yeah.
Well, let me skip ahead a second then, as long as we're talking about the Penny thing. You know, I also went back the other night and watched a couple of scenes from the episode "Dead is Dead," which is your big flashback episode in season 5, which has the scene where the smoke monster judges you and you're confronted by your daughter. But that also has 2 scenes in flashbacks. One where you go to kill Penny, and then her young son, her and Desmond's son, Charlie, emerges onto their boat at the marina, and you hesitate and you can't go through with it. And it's very similar to a flashback scene earlier in the episode where we finally see you being sent to kill Danielle Rousseau on the island all those years ago, and you see that she has a baby, which is Alex, and you won't do it. You see the baby is. So I think it's really interesting to see Ben in those moments. It sort of seems like he has from somewhere this this affection for children.
Yeah, as a ruthless killer, he has an Achilles heel, and it is parenthood or children.
Where do you think that comes from?
I think, his own upbringing, I suppose, or just wishing. Maybe he has always wished that his life, he wasn't meant to be this. Meant to be something, some tenderer and more natural and normal thing.
The guy who plays the piano and reads books.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, the kids. Here's his soft spot. It's endearing.
It actually is, surprisingly.
He won't go through with that heinous stuff.
Well, he went through with the purge.
And
he didn't have to do that himself, right? I mean, he did with his father. He was okay killing, but everyone else, he just kind of pressed the button and let stuff happen.
Yeah.
He didn't have to pull the trigger. Everyone in the Dharma Initiative.
And we don't see him explicitly suffering a lot about that thing,
right?
But it was bad, pretty bad.
Another thing that, sorry, Rosie, let me just squeeze in with one thing here. Another thing that Widmore says to you in that scene in the apartment that I love is he says, "Don't stand there looking at me with those horrible eyes of yours," which of course is just a joke about, I mean, you've got the big eyes. I don't know, fair, not fair, those big horrible eyes. Does that offend you?
I can't remember what his exact words were, but it was okay. That runs off me too.
You've got a reputation.
If in that moment my eyes are troubling or frightening, better and better. My terrible eyes, yeah.
This is one of those moments where I wish our listeners could see your face in this moment, because listeners, Michael Emerson loves this moment right here. He's making the eyes at us.
Yeah, so I have been thinking, I watched this episode now that we've, having talked to Kevin Durand, who plays Martin Keamy, and now to Michael, who plays Ben, thinking about their dynamic throughout this episode. I was thinking a lot about the contrast. Michael calls it, Keamy or Kevin Durand is sort of the antimatter to his matter. And I was
what a
thinking
great turn
about
of phrase, by the way. Sorry.
A way that he says it that feels much more accessible to me is that Keamy is the non-Ben.
Yeah.
Right, the absence of Ben. And I was thinking about that watching this episode and just the way that it's all put together, like the opening, the shots that we get of Keamy and his goons while they're transporting Alex back and making her, unlock the fence and all that stuff. There are a lot of shots that are only of them from the waist down, and all you see is their weapons, and you hear these very goon type voices, and that's contrasted with Ben playing the piano and, all of this stuff that is very gentle and, I don't know, that really, really stood out to me. And I was thinking about this idea that, Ben was maybe meant for another kind of life, and he's insecure in this role, and this is the first time we really see how insecure he is, and it's because, you know, this role was meant for somebody like Keamy, and instead it fell to Ben.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was so glad to hear Michael Emerson make that point, because I hadn't thought about it much that way. And, you know, what it brings to mind for me now that you say that is the Flash Sideways, where Ben is a high school teacher, and he's, you know, helping teenagers, you know, like, learn stuff and mature and grow up. And it's like, that is the version of Ben who, you know, maybe that is who he should have been. He seems so much more natural in that role.
We talk quite a bit about that with Michael in the second part of this interview, which we'll play at the end of the season. So don't want to go too far down that road.
Sorry about that. I almost forgot, actually.
Preempt that. But yeah, no, I agree. And, you know, we so far Ben has been, from the Henry Gale episodes onward, he has been this, like, indomitable leader who everything we learn about him is dark, it's sinister. You know, he's done all these horrible things in the past. Even in this season, we learn that he's manipulated Juliet out of selfishness and kind of for his own end. And this is like the first time you feel any amount of sympathy for him at all. And it's when he's just done this. I mean, Michael calls it making a cosmic mistake in letting Alex die, but he's trying to keep that facade up, and it just, I mean, and he kind of does. We don't really see him break even in this episode. Only in brief moments do we see the facade crack.
Right, like we see it. We definitely see it crack when, you know, when he first finds out that, you know, they're outside and that the hostage is his daughter. Like, his face just goes totally pale for a second there. And then we see it again, of course, after Keamy pulls the trigger, when there's that, you know, iconic shot of his face in the window. And then he immediately, you know, goes into action after that. But I think the idea that it is a facade and that he's not natural in this role, that's something that's not, and again, like, so you know, fascinated to hear Michael describe it that way. I feel like it's not something that's totally obvious watching him on screen all the time, like, because he is so manipulative and he delivers those zingers so well, and because he does the thing with his big eyes and can act so intimidating, like, he's very, very good at pretending to be that person. And I think that it was such a good point that Michael Emerson made. He said it jokingly. He said, "Oh, this stuff that's happening this season, like, it's not what did he say? It's not the high point of his career or something as a, you know, master planner and manipulator." And it's like, no, when you start to think about it, it's like his plans have gone off the rails, you know, again and again and again since, you know, the freighter showed up, basically. And this is the absolute lowest moment where he thought that he could talk his way out of, you know, the worst possible thing happening to him, and he couldn't. And I think that just goes to show, like, oh, you know, he says he always has a plan, but really he has not actually been in control of stuff for a while.
No, and not since they showed up.
And then you realize when you think about it, like, oh, it is kind of a facade. Like, it's sort of a house of cards he's built, and it's starting to, you know, it's trembling here. It's falling.
Yeah. And something I was wondering about is there anything Ben could have said during the confrontation that would have convinced Keamy to not kill Alex, other than giving himself up? Is there any way to talk yourself out of that? And I've got to think the answer is no.
I don't think so.
Like, even thinking about the way that Kevin Durant played that, and I was watching that really closely, and you can see it, that he doesn't want to kill this teenage girl, but what else is, you know, there's only one way this ends unless Ben gives himself up, and that's just not going to happen.
No, you're right. He's not. It's hard to imagine a scenario where he does give himself up as well. Like, it's hard.
Right.
In retrospect, it's hard to imagine the scene ending any other way than it does, because, and the way Kevin Durant said it, I mean, as much as Keamy doesn't want to kill Alex, he also doesn't care. He has no problem killing her if that's what's required of the mission. So it's like, knowing that that's where he's at, and knowing that even beneath his love for his daughter, Ben's self-preservation instinct is the thing that, you know, most drives him. The one thing that Emerson said that I disagreed with about what's going on in Ben's head, and I know how dare I disagree. He's the actor who played the character, so take it with a grain of salt. But he really, the fact that he really felt so strongly that Ben truly believed that Alex couldn't be killed because of the rules, and that was what was going to get him out of this situation. I think that maybe Ben convinced himself to believe that, or lied to himself into believing that. I think that's part of the self-preservation instinct, that Ben is telling himself, I don't have to give myself up here because the rules prevent her from being killed. I don't think that deep down that character really believes it. I mean, we're getting into a deep psychology area, but I think that ultimately he really knows somewhere that's, whatever the quote-unquote rules are, it's not going to save Alex's life, but he tells himself that to make it easier to make the decision he does, which is not to give himself up. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I also have some questions about whether self-preservation was the dominant force at work here, or whether it was more almost like an arrogance. The way I read it was like, not that Ben is in a place where he thinks, oh my God, my life is in danger. What can I do to save my life? What can I do to preserve my power? But rather, this is not possible. This is, and that's maybe where the rules come in. Like, not that there is a code somewhere and he trusts that Widmore will follow it, but that no one would ever do this to me. Or that, I have talked myself out of everything that has ever come my way. I will find a way to talk myself out of this. And it's the always have, I always have a plan ethos applied to a new thing, right? It's not that he has a plan and that he has written down step 1, step 2, step 3. It's that I've never failed to talk my way out of anything, and I won't fail now. And that's kind of what I was feeling watching the confrontation was, he's clearly digging himself into this hole, and despite my belief that there's not really any other way that this ends, you can see Ben sort of changing tactics as he gets more information in very short periods of time. The last sort of tactical change being, she means nothing to me. I stole her as a baby from an insane woman. I think it's more of an arrogance at work there than a desire to not die himself.
I think that's interesting in the context of what he was, he was saying, and we were talking about this facade that he's pretending to be this person, because what, in your interpretation, which I like a lot, it's almost like he's sold.
He's pretending so hard that he's fooling himself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like he actually now believes that he is this person who always has a plan and can talk his way out of anything. Because so far, he, nothing that terrible has happened, as a result of that. Like, things have started to crumble around him, but he can still, at this point, hang on to this fantasy that he's totally in control and can manipulate any event to his will. And now he really learns that he can't.
Yeah. Well, and we're still fresh off, again, it's so easy to forget, like, how short the island timeline is. Like, we're still, a month, maybe 2 months out from his, like, miraculous life-saving surgery.
Right.
And this idea that, like, the island delivered him up a spinal surgeon, which was just the thing he needed. And, a matter of weeks ago, he was sort of deciding who lived and who died and sending Ethan and Goodwin on these missions. And, like, he's had so much power for so long, I think.
Right.
I wonder if part of the reason we're only just now seeing the facade crack is that it's just, this is the first time it cracks. He's worn this mantle for years and years, and it's only been shaken in a matter of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, the thing that is so, one of the many things that's so shocking about that sequence of events is we see how little Ben cares about other life in this episode when, Hurley says very innocently, like, how's Sawyer going to get back in, right? And Ben turns to him and says, he's not, in his, like, slow, sinister Ben voice. And he doesn't care that Sawyer and Claire and all these other people are going to die. That is self-preservation,
right?
I think.
And the same thing in the scene with Tunisia that you were talking about. It's like these random dudes in the desert, like, he doesn't care. Like, I need to save myself. Bam, you're gone.
Right.
Really, really brutal.
Do you want to go to the beach and talk about the other events of this episode?
I do think we should go to the beach and talk about the other events of this episode.
In the meantime, while all of this is transpiring, some of our other heroes are on the beach, still trying to get in touch with the freighter. Of course, the doctor's body washes up. His throat has been slit, which has not actually happened yet, right?
Yes.
We, the viewers, have not seen that happen.
No, and in fact, it has not actually happened yet in reality. Like, in the timeline right now, that this is the whole... I mean, this is the time, the time works differently between the island and off the island thing going on. Like, Ray has not had his throat slit yet by Keamy.
Okay, that's right, because Keamy does it, and Keamy is on the island as we speak.
Yes, that's right. Keamy has to go back to the boat to kill Ray.
That's right. So that's wild.
I love that scene. By the way, this is what I'm talking about with this episode. Like, not only is the Ben storyline as amazing as it is, but the stuff that's happening on the beach, like the scene where they radio Morse code the freighter and get the message back that Bernard interprets for them. The doctor's fine. What are you talking about? I mean, that is a sort of skin-crawling scene, because it's like, to me, that's such an oh shit moment where you realize that something is truly, truly, truly screwed up. I mean, you realize that when the doctor washes up dead, and it's like, oh shit, what's going on the freighter? Are Sayid and Desmond okay? And then it just becomes doubly oh shit when you realize that there's like a time thing happening.
Well, either there's a time thing happening or they're lying.
Right. Either way, great storyline. Great storyline.
Yeah, and I love it when Bernard gets a moment in the sun. If anyone on this island knows Morse code, I agree that it's probably Bernard and Sayid, but Sayid is otherwise occupied. Yeah, and of course the confrontation at the end is great when Jack confronts Daniel Faraday and forces him to admit, no, we're not here to take you off this island, which we've known for a while.
Even though he's kind of said that a couple times, I think it's a little bit overblown. It's not my favorite part of that scene, I should say. But
what is your favorite part of that scene?
Well, one, when Bernard tells them what the real message is. But two, when Jack stumbles away, because as we, even though they don't reveal it here because he has like appendicitis or his appendix is ruptured, I really enjoy how they build up to that. Like, I had forgotten that the first scene in this episode, actually the first moment this episode, is like Kate sitting on the beach giving Jack a flirty look, which is an interesting way to start what turns out to be this epic episode about Ben. But then they get, I totally forgot, like, why is this episode starting with Kate? Okay. But then you get Jack and Kate talking, and Jack is like, medicating and says he has a stomach bug.
Yeah.
And the whole episode, he's kind of stumbling around. Like, you can tell he's holding himself in a weird way because of the pain he's in. And so I don't know, just from a total storytelling perspective, I really like how rather than just out of nowhere, like, Jack has appendicitis, you got to take his appendix out. Like, they spend a whole episode building up, like, oh, like, I think it's a good story.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
A low-key great B story for this episode.
So the last thing that happens, one of the last things that happens in this episode is the survivors of the assault at Camp Other are marching through the jungle, and Sawyer and Claire have decided they want no part of this. They're going to leave. Makes sense to me.
Yes.
Hurley starts to go with them, and then, of course, Locke pulls his gun on Sawyer, and Sawyer just looks exasperated, which is almost funny.
I agree. That was my note on this scene as well.
Yeah. There's a moment where Sawyer's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, after the day we have had, we're doing this now. We can't just leave. And, of course, it's because Locke needs Hurley to find the cabin, and he can't tell them that for some reason. But, yeah, whatever.
No, it's
funny.
I think they do say that they need him to find the cabin. But
okay.
But it's so... No, I agree. When Sawyer made that face and had that reaction, I identified with it so strongly because I had the same reaction. Like, really, John? Like,
seriously?
Really? And I love the protectiveness also that Sawyer shows towards Hurley, that he's willing to, put his gun right back in Locke's face because he thinks they're going to hurt his friend. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was nice for all the, mean nicknames he calls Hurley over the years. Like, he really goes to bat for his dude right here and threatens to kill
Yeah.
Locke if he touches a hair on his curly head. What is we do our hindsights. Do you have any hindsights?
You have two. You go ahead.
Oh gosh, yeah, a couple things. So I'll do this quick. One, Ben claims that Widmore has had Nadia killed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ever learn whether that's true or not, and I find myself wondering, why would Widmore have done that? Or is it more likely that Ben had Nadia killed for the purposes of manipulating Sayid?
Whoa.
Like, we have no reason to believe that either. And the thing with Bakir is, somewhat compelling, but it's then why would Widmore have killed Nadia? Giant question mark.
I have never considered this before. I mean,
I guess it's possible that maybe he was planning his own plot to manipulate Sayid that began with killing Nadia, but Ben got there first. But I would then struggle to believe that Widmore would have Nadia killed and not immediately pounce. Like, Ben was there ready to pounce. This actually relates to one of my other hindsights. But if you still have thoughts about why, that's my best theory for now. But I don't know about that. I could also see a scenario where really Ben pulled this off and had Nadia killed.
And blames it on Widmore. That's fascinating and horrifying. My faith is shaken.
I'm so sorry. I mean,
no,
Ben
it's okay.
Ben could have
thinking
faked
about
that
all
traffic
night.
stop photo at Santa Monica and La Brea and West Hollywood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What else you got?
Related to that, Sayid should have ended up with Nadia. That's a whole other thing that I won't.
That's a
hold
long-standing
yeah.
opinion here on the Hatch. Sorry, folks.
The one that's related to that, in terms of the moment that Ben arrives at, I have a theory. I have a theory that the the frozen wheel, based on the two instances of it that we've seen being used, it seems, I would say, to deposit people exactly in time, at the point in time where they either need or want to be. In Ben's case, in this episode, he goes 10 months forward in time. He turns that wheel right at the end of 2004, December 30th or 31st-ish, and he's deposited in October 2005. He arrives at just the right moment to be in a position to manipulate Sayid.
Right.
Which is what he needs. The second time we see the wheel used is when Locke turns it in season 5, and he is deposited not 10 months forward in time, but 3 years forward in time at the point when Jack has gotten depressed and crazy enough that he's in a position for Locke to begin manipulating him because he's lost Kate at this point, or is losing Kate. And what Locke ultimately needs is to bring them all back, and he needs to start by convincing Jack. And Jack, previously during these 3 years wouldn't have been in a place where Locke could have manipulated him, but now he is. So I don't know. That's two examples. 2 is not a trend in journalism, as we learn. You need 3 for a trend, but 2 can be a coincidence. But it does seem here like the wheel puts them both maybe where they need or want to be.
Alternatively.
Okay, I'm ready.
Does the wheel set them where the island wants them to be?
Okay, I'm listening.
The Ben Sayid thing's going to be a little bit more of a leap, but what the heck? The island does not want Widmore to find it because Widmore... And of course, we're accepting all kinds of assumptions here about the type of agency the island has, and whatever.
All good.
It doesn't want to be found by Widmore because Widmore wants to exploit it, right? And so it sends Ben to a place where he's best positioned to begin harming Widmore and hindering his movement in this direction.
Interesting. I like that because, that's Ben's interpretation as well. When they go to Jacob's cabin in Cabin Fever, he explains to Locke, he told us to move the island, but he didn't tell us how. And so Ben says it's on me to move the island. It lines up with this idea that Ben is supposed to turn this wheel. Of course, it's the man in black who gives him that order, but whatever. Go ahead.
Right. Right. And in John Locke's case, the island needs to bring, or I guess Jacob needs to bring the Oceanic Six back so that they can do all the candidate stuff, right? It needs to bring them back because they are candidates. And so it needs John Locke to go to that moment because of all the things that you just said. It's just, the change is just who or what is having the intention.
Interesting. I like
Yeah.
that. I like that a lot.
Why not?
I mean, the wheel is a force of, like, basically island magic, right?
yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's
how I
connected
understand
to
it.
the energy at the heart of the island or whatnot.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna slip in one more here.
Oh my goodness.
I'm doing it. I mentioned this earlier. Claire's house blows up, or firebombs or whatnot, and Sawyer pulls her out. And there's that fascinating moment when she says, "Oh, I'm a little woozy, but I'll be fine." And Miles says, "Well, I wouldn't be too sure about that." And as we know, Miles, I mean, this is nothing new. Miles communicates with the dead, as we know, and over the next few episodes, there are additional scenes where Miles seems like weirdly obsessed with Claire and is like watching her, and she still seems a little shaken up. And then we get her going to the Man in Black and being taken and going apeshit. But I mean, I think there's an interpretation here that Claire, maybe she did die when the house got firebombed and was saved somehow by the Man in Black or some force, or maybe she was supposed to die. It just seems like from this moment, based on Miles's comment and knowing where she's going, that this wasn't just a moment where, she survived, like a scary near-death experience, that something happened to her here that changed her. I mean, it makes me think of Sayid in season 6, where he was drowned and then, saved at the temple, and the Man in Black took him. It never made all that much sense, but I feel like the intention of the writers was to suggest that something like that is happening here, where Claire was supposed to die, or maybe even did die, and is now on a path where, the dark road that she goes down, that it maybe can't be avoided.
I have never considered that before either. Huh. Yeah. It's plausible. I'll definitely be watching for it as we go forward with the rest of season 4 here.
It doesn't make a ton of sense logistically based on what we see later, but it seems to me that something similar is happening.
There's some break of some kind, and yeah. Interesting. Something to watch for.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm done. I'll end my hindsight there, but
Yeah, well, on that forward-looking note that you've provided us, next week we will be watching Something Nice Back Home. This, of course, is a Jack episode where we learn more about his relationship with Kate and also his appendicitis.
And we will have more next week from our conversation with Jim Newport that we started last week, the production designer for season 4. Until then, follow us on social media. We're on Twitter at The Hatch Podcast, Facebook.com/The Hatch Podcast as well.
We always appreciate it when you rate and review us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, the app of your choice.
Our theme music is by Andy G. Cohen. Our cover art is by Danny Roth.
We will be back next week.
Namaste.